Welcome to Fantasy Football Aces. It's your boy William Wolf. I'm back. And we're ready for week 13, baby. Yeah. You hear that sound? That Celsius about to get me lit. Big week in the diamond. Big week in general. Huge game today between the Eagles and San Francisco. We'll talk a lot about that. In the Diamond League, we got a lot of teams fighting for a bye. We got 2 weeks left in the season. I'm still not even guaranteed in the playoffs right now. Technically could lose 2 straight here and then get beat out by points, and then some other things will happen and I end up not making the playoffs. It is possible. But it's also possible I win this week. I'm in one of these other top 2 teams lose. I'm a bye. And then next week win and I have a bye. If I had to bet, it's looking like I'm probably going to be the 3 seed. And can draw a really tough matchup. I think every year getting a bye is absolutely essential in fantasy football. I always say your only goal before the season is to make the playoffs. Then once you're probably a playoff team, your obvious goal is to get a bye. And then after that, it's really just luck of the draw. Who's the hot player in the playoffs? For example, last year, Mike Evans went crazy. You had a really weird run by Cam Akers last year. A couple years ago, Amon-Ra St. Brown went fucking nuts. It's just kind of like pretty much luck in the playoffs. Like who has the good matchups, who has the quarterback like Dak Prescott who just goes off that week like he has been going off all the last 6 weeks. And even if you have the best balanced team with the highest projections, you can easily take an L. Last year in the semifinal, I had the best team by far, really. I had the number 1 record, had the highest points, was the number 1 seed. Team was real strong all year, like was on an absurd winning streak. And then in the semifinal, I ran into a team who was very good and they outscored me, bro. Like Pat Mahomes, I had Pat Mahomes last year and he had a, not as good of a game in the semifinal and took an L, gone. So the point I'm trying to make is that this year, though, in the Diamond, we have about 7 teams that are really good. I would say all 7 of the top 7 teams have actually a legit chance to win a championship this year. They have that kind of roster. They have one of those kind of teams that if they get hot in the playoffs, they'll win. If they have one of those players that we spoke about here just a second ago, i.e. the Todd Gurley back in the day, winning a championship. You can go on and on with these kind of players that have good playoff runs and lead teams to fantasy championships. And what my point is that all 7 of these teams in the top 7, obviously only 6 are going to make it, have a chance to win the championship in the Diamond this year. I think all 7 teams have the firepower. We all have a small bit of a weakness on each of our teams. I think Criminals is the favorite in the Diamond with Christian McCaffrey. And I would say I'm probably the second favorite with a really good balanced team. And then I would say Korea is the third favorite with a team that if Achan starts getting it going, could turn into the favorite and a team that has just been lights out all year, highest points scored, number 1 seed, essentially like who I was last year on the Diamond. His team just doesn't take weeks off. He's scoring over 130 every single week. We'll take a look at his team right now. Korea. His team on paper, it looks vulnerable for sure. You got don't keep in mind that Josh Allen and Diggs are on the bench there at the bottom. And you also have Keaton Mitchell, who took over for like 70% snap share last week for the Ravens. And if that continues, man, oh fucking man, that means he's got a team that has Bijan, Keaton Mitchell on a good Ravens team with a good offensive line that's getting 70% snaps. And then you have Achan and Singletary, who you can choose between those two guys. Fucking Singletary got 70% snaps last week, 80% snaps last week, even with Damian Pierce back. So that's something you got to monitor there. But let's say hypothetically those guys stay at those snap shares they're at. He's probably the favorite to win it this year. You got Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, and Stephon Diggs, the best trio of receivers in our league. You got the best quarterback in the league, Josh Allen, for fantasy. And then you got firepower with Bijan, Achan, Singletary, and Keaton Mitchell to go along with a very good tight end, Sam Laporta. So this team right here can easily win it all. Real strong team. CJ Stroud, too, just lurking. He should have got more aggressive trying to move him. But it's tough to sell quarterbacks in fantasy. It really is. It's really hard to make trades one for one with quarterbacks because there's only 12 that start in fantasy and there's 32 in the league. So it's really difficult to trade one of those for a receiver or a running back. It just is, man. It's always been difficult to do in fantasy. It usually has to be some kind of package. I've talked about this in prior episodes. The Criminals, as I said, Kyler Murray, he's got a tough schedule down the stretch. I think that's kind of one of the vulnerabilities of this team. He obviously has DJ Moore, who's going to slide in for Mims. This is just temporary because he's on a bye. And this is one of the teams that I think can take an L today. Definitely can take an L today, considering the fact that he's got some buys going and he's got Christian McCaffrey going against the number one defense in the NFL. I think Christian will still have a good game, but it's not going to be one of those games that carries Criminals to a victory. It's going to be more on the high side, like a 25-point game, but I'd say more than likely this could be one of those games that Christian only has like 13, 14 points. Schultz went out for him. He made a little sneaky play with Juwan Johnson, which I did like. But the problem is that Olave is in. Olave is going to play, and I think that brings down Juwan Johnson's value tremendously. If Olave was going to be out, I think Juwan Johnson would have been a slam dunk in DraftKings and in a sub play like this for a weekly fantasy. But because Olave is playing, Derek Carr is one of those kind of quarterbacks. He does like to dump it down. I'm sure Juwan Johnson will have about 5 or 6 catches per about 40 yards. It'll be like, about a 5 or 6 point game for him, which is probably all Criminals wants out of him. But Derek Carr is one of those kind of quarterbacks that locks in on a receiver. He locked in on Devontae Adams. Before he had Devontae Adams, he used to lock in on receivers in Oakland, aka Vegas Raiders. Gruden got him to spread the ball a little bit more than he typically does, but he is one of those kind of quarterbacks that likes to lock in. I think he's going to lock in Olave today. I'm not a huge fan of Juwan Johnson simply because his snaps are limited with Taysom Hill taking some of them and the other young tight end Monroe taking some of his snaps. But he is a good play this week considering Shaheed and Michael Thomas are out. The ball's going to have to get spread around to somebody. I think Perry's going to be the number 2 receiver for New Orleans today. And, he's a good dart throw in DraftKings as well at 3,300. The weakness with this team, besides the things that I mentioned, is that David Montgomery, he's under 50% snaps right now for the Lions. I know that he's scored a touchdown in back-to-back weeks, and maybe that'll continue similarly to the way Jamal Williams was for the Lions last year, where he just had a bunch of touchdowns even though he wasn't getting all the snaps. That could happen with David Montgomery, and then he's a very good flex. But it's also a little scary when you're under 50% snaps and you're essentially TD dependent. I think David's got to have touchdowns because he's not going to catch the ball a ton, and he's only going to get about 10 to 15 carries. So you really are relying on him scoring touchdowns, which could possibly happen, but I still think that's a little bit of a weakness. It is a very good offense, though, and I think as far as a flex is concerned, he is elite. So it's a great flex. It's not. I mean, let's be honest. Korea's team, if he has a Keaton or a Singletary playing 80% snaps is a much better flex. And then I think Raheem Mostert getting, 60% snaps on the Miami Dolphins offense and goal line carries is probably a little bit better than Montgomery as well. Travis Etienne's stock has been going down. He's been losing snaps. He's not the true 75% plus snap share kind of guy that he was before the year, the first like 8 weeks. So that is a trending down moment for him. Tank Dell, Jalen Waddle, and DJ Moore are elite, though. His 3 receivers are absolutely elite. I wouldn't want to trade those 3 receivers for anybody else. I know I said Korea had the best trio, which he does, but we all 3 of us have good trios. As when I get to my team, I have a great trio as well. But the point I'm trying to make is that I wouldn't trade his 3 receivers for anybody else. They're good. This team could definitely win a championship. It's just really a matter of how good Kyler Murray plays for him in the playoffs. I think it's going to be tough, man. He's been inaccurate and he's looked rusty so far in since he's been back, missing a lot of throws. Let's make sure I'm live here. All right. So I am live. Wanted to make sure on that. I want to move on to my team. So I made a few changes here in the last week and change. I'll talk about my team here again with Nico Collins, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Puka Nacua. I love my trio as well. I will say Puka Nacua's stock has been going down a little bit just for the fact that Kyron Williams, in my opinion, is a good thing for the offense, and it's a good thing for Puka Nacua. But I will say that, he's not getting the 10 plus targets a week every single week anymore. So that's an issue in that offense for Puka. And he's not a huge touchdown threat. So if he's not getting the ton of volume and targets, it's hard to all right, I'm on my YouTube now. Celsius Hell. Yeah, it works for me, man. It gets me I drink one every day in the morning and it gets me going. I like it. He has Dalton Schultz as his tight end, and I think that I don't really consider that a weakness because it's in such a high-powered offense with C.J. Stroud. Any given week that he could throw 2 touchdowns to Schultz, and as far as consistency is concerned, like 10 plus points a week, yeah, it is a weakness, but he has a high ceiling with Schultz, which a lot of tight ends don't have high ceilings. The offense, there's just no potential there. Schultz can easily have a 10 target week and 2 touchdowns and have a huge 20-point week. So, and he did that against me when I played against criminals. Schultz scored 2 touchdowns against me, and that's the reason he beat me. It's the only reason why he beat me too. So I wouldn't consider his tight end a weakness when he has Dalton Schultz, but it's not. It's just like every other fantasy team. For example, my tight end, Taysom Hill, it's the same thing. I have a high ceiling, but he's not going to be consistent, like always over 10 points or whatnot. So, but I did make a big move on the screen here. And I picked up Isaiah Likely, which I'm really excited about. It's my backup plan in case Taysom Hill doesn't perform the way I think he's going to perform down the stretch. And the another team in my league, they dropped Isaiah Likely because he's on a bye. And I was going to start Atlanta's defense against the New York Jets this week, and I was really excited about that. But in my opinion, I thought it was more important for me to drop Atlanta's defense and just start Miami's defense and then pick up Isaiah Likely for the future. And that decision ended up being correct because on the waivers, if I didn't pick him up, criminals would have picked up Isaiah Likely. So I made the right move there. And he's just a backup plan. There's a chance I may start him next week, though. He's got a good matchup next week against the LA Rams. So there is a chance I start him. In the playoffs, he's got Jacksonville and San Fran. San Fran's not a good matchup. Taysom Hill has a good matchup next week as well with Carolina and the New York Giants. So ideally, and the Rams. Ideally, I want to keep Taysom Hill in as my tight end, but it's likely that Likely is a good backup plan for me. He looked really athletic for the Ravens. He gets, all the snaps. He's 90% snaps. They don't really have a whole lot of people to move the chains with besides, Zay Flowers. I know Odell Beckham's playing a little bit better. Bateman's playing decent. But I think Isaiah Likely has high potential in that offense. He's way quicker and faster than Mark Andrews. He's not as smart and savvy, but he's been in the league and following in Mark Andrews' footsteps for a long time. He's one of the few tight ends in the NFL that as a backup, he comes in and brings immense value. Usually the backup comes in, and that's exactly what they are. They're a bum backup tight end, and you might as well just say they're extinct from fantasy. But I think Isaiah Likely, he's one of those kind of guys that he could almost come in and have higher potential than Mark Andrews. He brings a different level of athleticism. I just don't think he's as big of a touchdown threat as Mark Andrews was in the red zone, which is probably what made Mark Andrews so valuable. But either or, it's a good thing to monitor now. Now I have a good backup plan to monitor. I can either go with Taysom Hill or Isaiah Likely down the stretch, whichever I feel more comfortable with as things play out, and I get to see more what's going to happen with this Saints offense because Taysom Hill only had 30% snaps last week, and if he continues on a 30% snap share, I'm going to take him out of my lineup. He's way too touchdown dependent at that point, and I don't think their offense is good enough, and he's not always in on the red zone right now. I think his value just went down compared to what it was when he had that stretch of getting over 50% snaps every week. They went back down. They changed his role back to what it was, which is 30% snaps, and I don't think you can start him at that 30% snap share. Back to what I was saying about Puka. With Kyren Williams playing better, I think it's overall good for the offense. They're going to be able to move the chains a bit more. The offense is going to be better. They're going to get more red zone opportunities, which means Puka is about the same value as he was. The difference is with Kupp in the lineup, he's not going to get those huge target shares. It's going to be less target shares and most likely around like 7 to 10 targets. And that makes him a decent wide receiver 3. And that's what he is for me. He's going to be a wide receiver 3 down the stretch for me. He has a great matchup week 15. So he'll be in my lineup against the Washington Commanders week 15. But for now, he's just a wide receiver 3. I need him to have a touchdown here and there and hopefully, one of these games, maybe this game today, he gets, 10 plus targets, which he catches most of those. So he'll have like, a 7-8 catch game. That's kind of what I want out of him. But I do have DeMario Douglas, and I have an emerging Jameson Williams as a backup plan for him as well. Because Jameson, they announced today or a couple days ago, Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for Detroit, announced that his role is going to expand here. So if he goes up to 80% plus snap share, which I think he's going to starting today, he becomes possibly an elite receiver. It would be strange and weird to have to start Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams at the same time. But It could easily happen. They have a good offense, and it's not weird to start two great receivers at the same time. Like if you had Higgins and Jamar Chase when Joe Burrow's healthy, or you had AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, Tyreek Hill and Waddle, et cetera, et cetera. I know that for me, I don't like to do that because you're banking too much on the offense, and if they have an off day, you're probably going to lose in fantasy. You'd rather spread your wealth around. But overall, if the ceiling is higher with Jameson and he gets up to 80-90% snaps, man, I'm not afraid to put him in over Puka. I really am not. I think that he's a Jameson's electric. He can score an 80-yard touchdown. Puka Nacua can't do that. And it's just a matter of opportunity for Jameson. So I'm going to continue to monitor that. But I think those are the three receivers I'm going to roll with into the playoffs. I'm not going to change them. Even it doesn't matter what the matchup is. But I do have it nicely set up here because let's say hypothetically Amon-Ra gets concussed. He's out, concussion. I can easily slide Jameson in, and he'll be the number one receiver on the team with Amon having a concussion. So that's a good backup plan. I love Demario Douglas. He's out today. If he wasn't out, I swear on my life I was going to start him over Puka today. I really was. But it's because he had gotten a concussion, I wasn't able to do that. So, but I do love him. Let's say hypothetically Puka or Nico get a injury, they get concussed or they get hurt. I'm not afraid to slide into Mario Douglas as well. And then, like I said, I have the likely Taysom Hill backup plan. And then I also let's say Raheem Mostert gets hurt or DeAndre Swift gets hurt. I'm able to possibly sub one of these guys in as my flex. And then I already have Pollard backed up by Rico. So the team's well positioned for the playoff run. I'm starting Miami's defense down the stretch the whole way, and I'm starting Green Bay against the Giants, against the Carolina Panthers Week 16 semifinal, hypothetically, if I make it that deep. I made a move this morning. I've been monitoring this for a little while here now. I was thinking about picking up Sanders for a while. He's been on waivers. Projections have him as a top-rated kicker every single week because that Miami offense is so good. But I kept rolling with Hopkins, who has been the number one fantasy kicker in all of fantasy, the kicker for the Cleveland Browns. But I'm not going to go into super a lot of depth about this in my thought process because it's just not that important. It's a kicker. But I'll say that with Watson hurt, I think that they're not getting enough opportunities to get inside the 50 to score, to kick field goals. I think that they're in a kind of similar situation to the Jets right now, where they're in a lot of game scripts where teams are not going to get that. They're not going to get that, take that many risks on offense because they know that the other offense can't move the ball. Like the Jets and the Browns, they're very similar right now. Elite defenses with very bad offenses. So I'd be interested to see what Joe Flacco does with the Browns today, but I decided to just roll with the kicker, even if he's not the best kicker in the NFL as far as accuracy is concerned. I know that the volume is going to be there. I know Miami's going to be in the red zone a lot. I know they're going to get in the 50 a lot, and I know that they have great matchups. They're green the rest of the way through. So I'm just going to roll with him and, live with the consequence or if I made the wrong decision or not, because Hopkins has been very good for me throughout the year. And then last but not least, I wanted to talk about still legit. The weakness of his team is him having too many of the same players on the same team. So he has Hawkinson and Justin Jefferson, who are both going to be back. They're on a bye this week. Justin Jefferson's going to be back anyways, but he's got those two guys that are going to slide right into the lineup. So he has Hawkinson. He'll probably take Watson out here. So he'll have Justin Jefferson, London, and Kirk. I think that is a horrible weakness because because Kirk Cousins is gone. With I think Justin Jefferson coming back for his team hurts his team, as crazy as that sounds. The reason I say that is because Hawkinson has been so valuable for him as a tight end. He's been the number one tight end of all fantasy. Why? Number one, it's because they had Kirk Cousins originally. Then, coincidentally, when Kirk Cousins went down, so did Jefferson. So Hawkinson became massive target share. But when Justin Jefferson comes back, what's going to happen? Dude, they're going to be trying to get the ball to Justin, right? That means Hawkinson's value is going to go down. And that's wealth is going to get spread. It's going to get spread to and Justin's not going to be that same guy with fucking Dobbs. It's not even going to be close. It's not even going to be close. So Justin Jefferson coming back to him actually hurts him. It spreads the wealth. Justin's not going to be as valuable. Drake London, not in a great offense, but he's playing decent. Christian Kirk, his value went down with Zay Jones back, and just in general, there's so many people to feed in that offense. You're lucky every week if you get a good week out of him. Brian Robinson's stock went way down. He's down to 50% snaps with Antonio Gibson back. Jaylen Warren, he got announced as the starter, but he's 50% snap share with Najee Harris. And then Kyren Williams, the very strong, bright spot of this team. Now, if this guy, Kyren Williams, can keep doing weeks like he did last week, yeah, this team has a chance to win a fantasy championship. For sure. For sure. That's the kind of player, the way he performed, he's essentially like a Christian McCaffrey. He's getting 90% snaps. He's catching the ball. He's running the ball. He's their Mr. Everything. So, and McVay knows how to dial it up for him. So with that being said, he has a type of player that can win you a fantasy championship. That's why this team has a chance. He has Madison, who's also in that Minnesota offense, and he has Aaron Jones, who's been hurt. For him, I think ideally he'd probably like to get Aaron Jones in there for Brian Robinson probably down the stretch, and then slide Warren into the flex. I think Warren would be an awesome flex for him. Hawkinson, Aaron Jones, and Kyren Williams to go along with Jefferson, London, Kirk, and Herbert. This is a team that can win a championship for sure. Into the matchup specifically this week, I'm playing Mike Correa, automatic pickings. I got lucky this week where Jalen Hurts is going against San Francisco. That I can't ask for a better matchup than that for me. He still will probably have a good game, but it's limited. It's not going to be as massive as it possibly could have been with San Fran. I still think he'll probably have over 24 points, but you can't ask for much more going against San Francisco. You really can't. It's ideal. Chase, his stock has been down without Burrow, which is great. Tyreek Hill, I expect to have a massive game, but that'll be his one guy. Rashee Rice has been trending up, so he's got a really good trio of receivers. Eckler against New England is going to be tough, but he's good. You're getting Gibson in there, Otten, and Jaden Reed who's questionable. He might be in trouble if Jaden Reed doesn't play. I don't know what he's going to do. He might have to take a zero burger there, to be honest, because Jaden plays tonight. I guess he would have to drop Jaden Reed and pick somebody up. That would be his only option if Jaden Reed doesn't end up playing. And that's a real possibility. And that would be a huge fuck up by him. I thought he should have started Brandon Cooks in the flex. I thought it was a mistake. And I love when my opponents make mistakes. I would have started him. I wouldn't have took a risk on this injury. And I would have started Cooks in my wide receiver spot. I would have moved Rashee Rice down to my flex and then played it like that. That's the way I would have done it. But he didn't do that, and now he's kind of stuck because Shaheed is out. I knew he was going to be out. I think that's bad management as well because he had him in the flex the whole time. And then he chose to sap Brandon Cooks on Thursday, essentially choosing Jaden Reed over him. But the thing is, just Jaden's questionable. He'll probably play, but I just don't think it's worth the risk. I would have started Brandon Cooks. For me personally, I have a healthy offensive lineup besides my quarterback who is on a bye. Justin Fields on a bye. And I've been struggling about who I'm going to start at quarterback. all week. I've been bouncing back and forth between Derek Carr, Kenny Pickett, um, um, Baker Mayfield, etc. And I was really trying to monitor the weather for the Bucks game, and that was kind of what it was coming down to for me as far as my decision was concerned. And it seemed like the weather is going to hold up here in Tampa, so I decided to go with Baker just simply based on the fact that he's thrown a touchdown in every fucking game. Like literally, he's thrown a touchdown in every game except one, opposed to Derek Carr, who's had a bunch of 0 touchdown games. Not only that, but they like to bring Taysom Hill in on the red zone. It's like I don't want to take my chance. I think that if I start Derek Carr, I'm working a lot Taysom Hill against each other. I'm essentially saying I'm betting on the Saints offense against the Lions, which I think is a good bet, by the way. But I'm spreading the wealth. Like, okay, if Taysom steals the red zone quarterback spot from Derek Carr, then I'm stealing points from my quarterback. And I'll be happy that Taysom Hill gets in, but then I'm taking my chances away from Derek Carr. And the vice versa. If Derek Carr starts slinging touchdowns and throwing in the red zone, then Taysom Hill's going to have a 0 burger. So, I mean, for me, I rather always try to raise my ceiling if the best I can. And I know Carolina, as far as matchups concerned, the Lions are a much better matchup for Derek Carr than the Carolina Panthers are for Baker Mayfield. But I don't think it's kind of like the Jets defense. They're one of the top 10 worst defenses against running backs, but it's not because they're bad at stopping the run. It's just because the way game scripts are, it just inevitably ends up being one of those type of situations where the other team is pounding them because they're winning, and they end up, getting gathering and gaining yards and getting points via the running back because they're so good at stopping the pass and they're always losing. Vice versa, Carolina has been elite against quarterbacks and against receivers, but it's not because they have a good defense that can stop quarterbacks and receivers. It's because they can't move the ball. Their game scripts are always like the Jets, where they can't stop the run and they're always losing. So teams just pound them and they don't really take a risk because they can't move the ball offensively. They're bad on offense. But the reason why I think Baker can break that is because I think this can be a more of a competitive game. Devin White's out, Levante David's out, Jamil Dean's out. The whole Bucs defense is out. I think that Carolina can move the ball against them, and I think that this can be a game that both teams have to score. And I'm just taking a safe bet that Baker Mayfield at least throws 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns, and I think that could be enough for me to get a victory here. I just need to squeak out a victory here. I need a big game from Amon-Ra St. Brown because DeAndre Swift is going against a tough San Francisco defense. And I need a big game from Raheem Mostert. You got to hope Achane doesn't take too many of those snaps from Raheem, and Raheem, gets the goal line carries because that's going to be essential in this game. But I like in this matchup, I should say. But I like Raheem, Sanders, and Miami. I'm betting big on Miami here down the stretch as far as that's concerned, and I really like this bet. And I know that Sanders works against Mostert a little bit because ideally you want Mostert to finish off drives and score touchdowns, but I'm okay with that because extra points, touchdowns equals 1 point for Sanders, and I'm going to go with that volume and that offense. I think that when you have kickers, in theory, Hopkins was great the way my theory was with him initially for the last 5 or 6 weeks. But I think it's changed now that Watson is hurt, Deshaun Watson. So I'd rather go with the other kind of kicker I would like, which is a kicker who's in an offense that scores a lot of points. Because that's what fantasy is, right? You want guys in offenses that are getting in field goal range all the time. Whether they score or not, which is the reason why Sanders has been bad this year, is because Miami scores so many touchdowns. They finish so many drives. That's fine though. I don't care. I'll accept the fact that I'm most likely will be reliant on him kicking game-winning field goals and or him kicking a field goal right before the half Like, they drive down with like 50 seconds left in the half and they kick like a 40, 50 yarder and then get the volume besides that. And they'll get stopped in the red zone here and there and I'll get field goals. So I'm really just betting on that Miami offense, which is a great bet. In the other matchup that I can possibly is Comeback Kid. He's starting a lot of bad players, but I think he has a fighter's chance against the Criminals this week. He's starting Mims. I think that's a bad start. And I think that Christian McCaffrey going against Philly is tough. Juwan Johnson is a tough. And I think David Montgomery is a tough matchup against the Saints as well, considering the fact he's getting less than 50% snaps. So I think that this team has a puncher's chance this week. He got lucky with Higgins being in. Curtis Samuel's been hot. And Watson's not been horrible for Kansas City. He's got a dart throw chance with him. Aubrey had a big game for him, which helped him, a lot. The way teams pull off upsets in fantasy is usually their defense and kicker go off. And he's got pretty good matchups with Jacksonville against Cincinnati and Aubrey already having a big game. All right. And also in other news, I'm ahead of Still Legit right now, but it'd be nice for him to take another loss because we're so close in points. And he started off horribly, starting off Dallas defense with -1. So I think Hurt Thielens has a really good chance to pull off an upset as well. And he picked up Zeke Elliott, so he's most likely going to start him. I think that's a good spot start for him, considering that he has all these buys with Saquon Barkley out. He went with Pickett, which I like against Arizona as a dart throw quarterback. I actually would have preferred him over Baker Mayfield. I was going to pivot to him, but I didn't get a chance to pivot to him today. I was waiting on weather on this game, and I didn't. And then when I was waiting, because I was going to wait till Sunday to see the weather, and then Hurt Thielens ended up picking him up. So it was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to have to ride with Baker Mayfield. It is what it is. It was between him and Derek Carr, essentially, for me. And I'm just riding with Baker. Fuck it. But yeah, he's got that. I think he can easily pull this upset off. And then Korea, he's probably going to lose too. So he's the number 1 seed, and he ran into a buzzsaw this week with Prescott, Lamb, Ferguson, and Charbonnet going off on that Thursday night game. So it's going to be tough for him to come back. I highly doubt he comes back. So he'll be down to 9-4. And then it's just a matter of what happens with myself and the Criminals matchup, and Still Legit. These four can be shaken up tremendously after this week. Korea will remain the 1 seed because his points are so high, but him losing this week puts him at risk of possibly even falling out of a bye situation. Because if he loses next week as well, then he loses his bye. So Korea, he's in trouble right now for sure as far as a bye is concerned with the loss this week, which he's gonna lose this week. Hypothetically, let's say all 3 of us win. Let's say all 4 of us win. We all are 9-4 going into the last week of the season, and at that point, anything can happen. It's just like the playoffs. Anything can happen in the last week of the season, and that means the bye situation is really going to be awesome to monitor next week in week 14. That'll do it for that. All right. So let's talk a little bit about um let's get into DraftKings. I'm only gonna play three lineups this week, and they're for a decent amount of money. I'm risking about 1,500 in these three lineups. They're all low entry, low payout kind of bets. First place is like 20,000 or 15,000, somewhere around there. But there's only 100, 200 entries. I like these better. This is what I've grown into like loving the most. Those $20 entry $1,000,000 ones are fun, and I'll do those when I have extra money in my thing to play 6 or 7 lineups like I have in the past. But man, they're so difficult and they're so top heavy. Like it's almost like it's so lucky. It's just super luck. I think here you can get a little bit more skill and possibly win. In these leagues, over this year, I've kind of developed a good strategy for the way I want to build my teams. I've experimented with different things throughout this year as far as how I want to build my teams, and I've come to the conclusion that in these big buy-ins with less entries, I want to have a guaranteed slam quarterback, right? I've taken chances on lower costing quarterbacks in good matchups, but I think that is way too risky. I think it's one of those kind of things that you should do when you're trying to win the $1 million. But when you're in these high entry, high entry fee, low entry leagues, or I don't know what they call these these contests with high entry fee, price entry fees, but low amount of people in them, it's better to go, in my opinion, I'd rather go with the slam quarterback spot. So for me, it was very simple. It's either you're starting Tua against Washington or you're starting Brock Purdy against Philly. Every quarterback has done great against Philadelphia's defense and through the air. They're really good at stopping the run, and I think that's a great spot to start quarterbacks against them because they have to throw the ball, and that Philadelphia is going to score. So I think that here my friend's actually texting me about my lineups. And so for me, it was between Brock Purdy and Tua. I like Brock Purdy more for two reasons. One, he's cheaper. And two, Miami, they're going to be able to score all different ways on Washington. They may run the ball in 4 times. It might be Achane and Mostert the whole time, right? But Tua might have a humongous game too. He might throw for 4 touchdowns, but there's the chance that they run it in a bunch of times. I think Brock Purdy, on the other hand, Philadelphia does not play that run shit. Even if it's Christian McCaffrey, it don't fucking matter. You're gonna have to throw on them. So that's why I think Brock Purdy's a more safer play. I like him better in this, but I think Tua's great too. I think it's either one or the other in these kind of big entry buy-in contest. As far as running backs are concerned, my strategy is very simple now at this point, and I've really hammered it down. I've cashed, the last 3 weeks I've cashed in these buy-ins, by the way. Very, very sharp. And it's high volume running backs, guys that are getting 70% snaps or more in good matchups or bad matchups. I don't care if it's a good or bad matchup. I want them 70% plus snaps. I want them to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield. And that guy, Rashad White, has been my guy I'm playing every week for that reason. And he plays the Panthers this week. He's a must start in DraftKings. You have to start him. Against the Panthers at 75% plus snap share, he is the best play on the whole slate. He's way undervalued. He's been way undervalued all year. He's climbing right now. He's up in the $6,000 range now. But he's still the best value on the slate because of what he brings to the table. He's 75% plus snap share, catches the ball out of the backfield, goal line runner. And the offense is good too. The offense isn't bad, and the Panthers are a slam spot. I have him in every single one of my lineups. Zach Moss, super undervalued, 4,000 and change. He's going to be one of the most highly owned guys on the whole slate, but it doesn't matter. He's going to be 80% plus snaps, and he's in with Jonathan Taylor out, and he's going to catch the ball. He's a must start guy at that price at 4,000 and change. It doesn't matter who they're facing. He's way too cheap. You have to put him in your lineup because the volume that he's going to get, probably in a very competitive game too. Obviously you need him to have a good game, but even so, at 4,000 and change, bro, he can have a decent game and you're still okay. I got Tyreek Hill in every single one of my things. He's 9,000 and change. Obviously, he's gonna be when you start a guy who costs that much, $9,000, you have to have them go off. But if there's any spot this year where it's almost a guaranteed Tyreek goes off, it's this week against the Washington Commanders. So I think he's a must kind of start here. You also leverage yourself. Like, for example, if I have Brock Purdy as my quarterback and other people have Tua, me having Tyreek Hill in my lineup leverages me a little bit because it gives me an opportunity to cancel out some of those big Tua touchdowns, right? So if some guy started the Tua Tyreek Hill stack, which I'm sure a lot of people are going to do, even in this $1,000 buy-in, at least I have Tyreek Hill, so I cancel those out, so I don't have to stress that Miami game that much with Brock Purdy as my quarterback. And then in all three of my lineups, I went with a different number 2. I went with Michael Pittman Jr., who's been a huge target share kind of guy for the Colts going against the Tennessee defense. He's in a great spot. He's getting over 10 targets a week. He's a great start every single week. He's a big body, big touchdown threat. Adam Thielen, I went with in my other lineup because he's been a big target guy. They have a new offensive coordinator. I think it's a worth the gamble as far as that's concerned. More importantly than that, you got a bunch of people out for the Bucs on defense. Their best defenders, Devin White, Levante David, those two guys are out. They have Vita Vea versus the world on that defense right now. That defense is absolutely trash without all those guys. He's got Vita Vea, and that's it on defense. So I think that Adam Thielen has an opportunity to have a big game, at least 10 targets, and then you just hope that turns into a touchdown and over 100 yards, which I think it easily could. I think that this game could actually weirdly be a high-scoring game where both teams can't really stop each other, even though the over-under is low. And I've said that before, and it ends up being a low-scoring game. It easily could as well, but I think Adam Thielen's a good play just because his price isn't too much, and he is the number one receiver with a lot of targets. And then my other lineup, I have Tua as my quarterback, so I needed to get a San Fran guy in there against that 32nd, 31st defense against receivers, which is the Eagles, and I got Debo in there, so that kind of leverages me a little bit against Purdy, even though Purdy likes to spread the ball around, hence why I didn't stack him in either one of these lineups. I didn't stack any San Fran guy. I just want Purdy to have a big game. I don't care who it's to, and I don't want to gamble on who it's to. That's the thing with Brock Purdy is you're taking a gamble if you stack him, because if you stack him, he could throw touchdowns to everybody else but your guy, and then that's just it sucks. So I'd rather just gamble on Purdy having a big game. I don't care who it's to. But in this game, I gambled on it being Deebo Samuel because he's cheap. He's 6,000 and change. He's heavily involved in that offense. And if I had to stack anybody, it would be Deebo because his price is fair. And I think he's worth the price. And he is their second best player after Christian McCaffrey on that offense. I have Tua and Tyreek Hill stacked in this lineup, same running backs. And then in all three of my lineups, I went with Devontae Parker. He's at 3,300. I just think that, in that against LA, they've been really bad against receivers. I think that could be, a game where Zappy shows out and plays a little bit better. They possibly could be having trailing in that game and having to throw a lot. And they don't really have anybody to throw it to besides Devontae Parker with Pop Douglas being out. And at 3,300, I think it's a really good dart throw. I think he could easily get, 10 targets. I really do. And if he does get 10 targets, that's just phenomenal for a $3,300 guy. At tight end, I went with Brian Jordan this lineup. This was able to me to get a lot better players all across the board here, with Tua being more expensive than Purdy. But Jordan is a huge dart throw. He's only 2,500. He's the backup tight end for Dalton Schultz. He's going to be starting in a big-time offense for Houston, and that's what you're counting on, right? Jordan can easily throw up a 0-point burger, though. He's only 2,500, though, so I guess I can kind of afford him to throw a 0 out there. But you're also taking a chance in a big offense that he catches a touchdown, or, he gets 5 or 6 targets, 5 or 6 catches for 40 yards. I think that'll be doable for a 2,500 kind of guy. And these other two lineups, I went with Joku, with Joe Flacco in the lineup, a better passer. The Rams being pretty bad against tight ends. I think Joku on the slate at 4,100 is probably your best option on the whole slate for the price. There's other tight ends that are better spots. I think George Kittle, he's always a good gamble, but he's 6,000 and change against Philly. You just don't know if he's going to get all the targets. Sometimes he only gets 3 or 4 targets in a game. Joku's been getting over 8 targets every single week, and I just like the spot for him, and with Joe Flacco being the quarterback, and I just think that has a possibility of having a pretty big game at 4,100. In the flex, I went with Singletary in 2 of these lineups. I did that because he's cheap and he got 80% snaps last week. I know Dameon Pierce is back, but they left Singletary in as 80% snap. That could change this week. I'm hoping, but I'm banking on it not to. I wouldn't start Singletary if it wasn't for him showing that he was 80% snaps last week with Dameon Pierce back. I don't know if that's going to shift because they're slowly working Dameon Pierce back. But I'm taking a gamble it doesn't. Against Denver, they're playing against the Broncos, who's the 32nd run defense in the NFL and fantasy, the worst in the NFL. I know that's inflated because of the Miami Dolphins game where they gave up 70 points. But overall, I've watched them play in the last few weeks, and they still are very vulnerable against the run, in my opinion. I see teams be able to pound them. And I think Singletary, with 6 catches last week, he's a very, very good candidate for catching the ball in a high-powered offense with the Houston Texans. They're running back, and if he gets 80% snaps, he's a slam play at 5,000 and change in DraftKings. You have to start him. Like, if you're not starting an 80% snap share guy for 5,000 and change in a high-powered offense, you're making a mistake. So I love my 3 running backs in those. And this one here, I went with a what did I do different here? I went with Joku here in this lineup with the same kind of range for receivers, and I had to go a little bit cheaper at running back, and I think Jaylen Warren is a good flex play. They're playing against the Cardinals, one of the worst defenses in the NFL. He's only in a 50% snap share, which is a kind of player that I don't like to start in DraftKings at this point, I've learned. But just the fact that he's going against the Cardinals, he is their pass catching back. I think he has an opportunity to have a massive game, and his ceiling is much higher than Najee Harris because of his catching ability in DraftKings, and he's more of an explosive player. So I'm hoping that Jaylen Warren gets, 14, 15 carries, 5 catches, and then he gets a touchdown. If he does that in the flex for his price, that's a really good option. You got Tyreek Hill. You need in all 3 of these lineups to absolutely go off today. I need nuclear Tyreek Hill. I need it to the point where Tyreek Hill, if you don't have Tyreek Hill in your lineup, you don't cash in these big contests. So that's the kind of game I need Tyreek Hill to have. If Tyreek Hill has a mediocre game, then all 3 of these teams probably won't cash, if I'm being completely honest. And then at defense, I went with the Jets. I stayed in that Jets-Falcons game. I could actually pick and choose which one I want to start because they're $100 difference. I went with the home team though. The Jets are the better defense in the home team. I know the Falcons are have a little bit better offense, but Ritter's been bad. He'll give up. He'll turn the ball over. The Jets defense is great. The Falcons offense is not going to be able to really. The Jets' weakness is in fantasy is actually against running backs. But like I always tell you, it's not because they're bad at stopping the run. I think they're going to be able to lock up the Falcons. I think this is actually a really good matchup for the Jets. This is going to be a super low scoring game. You can't go wrong with either one of these defenses in fantasy. But overall, the Jets are at home. It's going to be a rainy game, and they have a better defense, a way better defense than the Falcons. And I just think that they're going to turn the ball over. They're going to get sacks, and it's just going to be a punt fest in this game. So those are my 3 lineups. I'm really bullish about these lineups this weekend, by the way. I think I have an opportunity to win some decent amount of money this week. I'm going to take a piss, and then I'm going to get into some matchups, and we're going to talk about my bet of the week as well. All right. So we've been going for a little bit, going for about an hour. I feel like we've been going longer than that, to be honest. Let's see if I have any questions. Puka or Cup PPR? I don't know how long ago you wrote that, Matt Z. I don't know if you're still in here, but it's a tough one. The good thing for both of those guys, Puka and Cup, is that Denzel Ward is out for the Browns. Their top corner. He's one of the most elite corners in the NFL. I think that's a huge. I think the Rams offense is actually going to do well against Cleveland this weekend at home. I think that they're almost fully healthy. I know Cup is a little banged up with his ankle, but if you made me choose between Cup and Puka, I'm going to pick Cup every single time. I'm not going to really overthink that. I know he's been bad. I get it. Like, if you have Cup, it sucks. Like, but I also think that I said this about other players in fantasy before, and I'll hold true to this, is if you drafted Cup, man, you're not going to sit him, man. You're going to start him, bro. Like, that's just the way it is. You live and die with him, and if you die, you die. I mean, like, you can't, if you drafted Cup, you can't be like, try to get cute. You drafted the player to be your dog, and if he fails you, he fails you. I mean, on to next year. That's the way I look at it. I don't think you pivot from a guy like that. I think you keep him in your lineup. I mean, if you drafted him, it is what it is. It's kind of like some other players I've talked about in the past on this podcast where people ask me if you should start him or not. And I'm like, well, I wouldn't have drafted him. But if you drafted him, you start him, bro. He's your guy. Now, I know you get to choose between him and Puka, but like, can anybody really answer that question? It's just luck. I mean, they're both They're both getting the same opportunity right now. They're both, I'd say, I say Stafford, believe it or not, right now, he likes them equally as far as like how he targets. Like he's not really looking at one or the other primarily, which is kind of weird for Stafford because he usually locks in on one guy. But right now, he's more or less just letting the offense run. And I believe that McVay's kind of like scheming up one or the other to be open. I don't really think one of the others the vocal part of the offense right now. I think Kyren Williams is the vocal part of that offense. So for me, I probably would go with Cup. But I don't think there's a right or wrong answer there. They're pretty much the same tier at this point. I just think Cupper probably has higher potential. Hypothetically, if you're not considering the ankle injury at all, Cup has a higher ceiling than Puka. Cup can easily catch a bomb. He should have caught a bomb the other week. He was spinning, and I think that was the game that he got hurt. Before that, I forget if it was last week or the week prior, but he should have caught a 40, 50-yard touchdown. I don't think Puka has those same opportunities that often in this offense right now. I think he's more the underneath guy. Puka is one of those kind of guys that he could pile up a bunch of catches, but so can Cup. So I would always start Cup over Puka personally. I'd rather have Cup than Puka. But the good news is that Denzel Ward's out, so I'm not afraid to start either one of those guys. Let's get into some matchups. I'm going to talk about my bet of the week first, guys. I hate the line right now, but it opened at 1.5, 2.5, 2. I've seen 2. I've seen 2.5. I've seen 1.5 for the San Fran Philadelphia game. Right now, it's sitting currently at 3, which I hate for me because I think that the bet of the week right now is the San Francisco 49ers. I believe that this team is super hungry right now. They want payback on Philadelphia. And I think that they're in a spot where Philadelphia is a little vulnerable playing 3 games in 14 days. They got Fletcher Cox out. Lane Johnson, their left tackle, is a little banged up. I think he's going to play. I haven't looked into it 100%. Their secondary has been vulnerable all year. It's not like their defense has been good this year. It really hasn't. They're elite against the run. They're going to probably be good against Christian McCaffrey, but that's not going to stop Purdy from dominating. Hence why I have Purdy in all my DraftKings lineups. I think that San Francisco is going to be, I already said this, but I'll reiterate, extremely hungry in this game. I think they're peaking again. They went on a little skid without Deebo Samuel, but to be honest with you, I think that common denominator is Deebo Samuel. He makes an enormous difference in their offense. When they have him in the offense, it just makes them so hard to stop. Ayuk is running routes over the middle. Deebo and Christian McCaffrey are running all this exotic shit where you don't know which one of them is going to get the ball. They're both elite yards after catch. They're both elite pass catchers. They're both interchangeable. They essentially can run the other person's role. They can do really, really, really smart, unique schemes with Shanahan, with McCaffrey and Deebo. So when they have both of them on the field, it just makes them impossible to stop. They were the best team, and they were my Super Bowl winning team. I picked them. And their safety they lost was a huge loss, but it's not going to matter overall. And I think that in this game, they're going to dominate Philly. I think Philadelphia could easily still beat them in a playoff matchup, although I would bet on San Fran. And I think Philadelphia is in the same tier as San Francisco. It's either them or Philly going to the Super Bowl in the NFC, in my opinion, pending any major injuries. But In this game particular, I think it's just lined up for San Francisco to fucking dominate them, man. And I would bet a lot of money on it. So that is my pick of the week at 3 points. It's concerning, but it also tells you a lot. It tells you, damn, Vegas fucking knows too. And I think that they're begging for people to bet on Philadelphia at a 3-point dog. They're begging for it. Like this team has one loss. They're the best record in the NFL, and they're a 3-point dog at home, and they don't have any major injuries besides like, Fletcher Cox and Lane Johnson's banged up a little bit. I get that, but that's crazy. That's fucking crazy. As a matter of fact, it's so crazy. Philadelphia is the first home dog this late in the year as having the best record in the NFL. It hasn't happened since like 1970. Since they started keeping track of this kind of shit, it's never happened. There's never been a home dog. Think about this. This team is the best record in the NFL. That's what the stat is, by the way. The best record in the NFL this late in the year. And they're a home dog. That is fucking nuts. It's nuts. And what that tells me is San Francisco super sharp. And that is the bet of the week this week, guys. I really like it a lot. I wish you can get it at 2.5 or 2 or even 1.5 like it opened. But, people have been pounding San Francisco. I think it's sharps betting them too. I don't really think it's the public. But we'll see where it goes at game time. I'm going to wait until game time to play it, hoping that it goes down into the 2 range. I'm even hoping sharps bet on Philadelphia because why wouldn't they? I think that's an extremely sharp play to take a home dog like the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, if you're getting 3 points at home, like that's such a sharp play for any sharp out there. I think that people are going to have a hard time betting on San Francisco -3 on the road against Philadelphia, but we'll see where that line goes at 425. But with that being said, that is the play of the week. In other news, let's look at this real quick. Lions went up to 4.5 against the Saints. I think the Falcons-Jets game, taking the under in that game would be a very, very smart play. Very smart play. Anytime you see an over-under that low, it's 33, take the under. That's a huge, sharp play in my opinion. Man, that over-under, I kind of low-key wish I would have started Derek Carr, though, man. That 47.5 is one of the highest on the slate. That can be easily a high-scoring game. I'm rolling with Baker Mayfield, and that over-under is 36.5, man. It tells me that could easily be a low-scoring bullshit game. I'm a little nervous about that, man, but it is what it is, man. It's a bye-week play, and have to start Baker Mayfield, so just got to pray that he throws 2 touchdowns. If he throws 2 touchdowns, I'm good. So that's what I'm really hoping for. Throw it to Mike Evans, baby. Fire the cannons! Dolphins, Commanders. Big spread there. And yeah, man, that'll do it, honestly, bro. Like, we've covered a lot of shit. We've covered the diamond. We've covered my play of the week. We covered DraftKings. I just kind of wish this would have ran closer to 1 o'clock. But that's okay, because I want to review some more stuff on DraftKings before I finalize these lineups. And hopefully, I pull out a W this week. I think this week, these next 2 weeks are absolutely enormous for a bye. And also, if I win this week, I'm in. I at least solidify myself in a playoff spot. Because if I lose this week, I put myself in position to possibly miss the playoffs, which is bizarre, but it really could happen. So, yeah, we need a win this week, and if we get that win, we're putting ourselves in position for a bye, and we are guaranteed lock for the playoffs. And my team could definitely win. So, which any given week they can win. I have a strong, good team. So I'll holler at y'all boys. I'm gonna probably pop on Tuesday because this is such an essential part of this season. So I'll pop on Tuesday for waivers, even though waivers aren't that important. It'll be more so about reacting to the NFL. And guys, I highly recommend taking San Francisco this weekend. I think it's a very strong play. Peace.